1. This is the Surly Grognards for May 19th, 2014. This is Peter Bowman, and as usual, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Eric Carlson. How are you doing tonight, Eric?
Doing all right.
Excellent. So, tonight we have a topic that we came up with, I think, maybe 20 minutes ago?
Maybe. You were in the middle of shooting space monsters at the time.
I was in the middle. I was shooting robots mostly, but yes.
Yeah, yes.
That particular mission was robots. I was playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, and Eric came with the concept of talking about our favorite alien races. And I thought, well, we've done fantasy races, we've done villains, so what the hell? Why not aliens?
War list for everyone.
Yay,
lists.
lists
For.
Yes, the internet is for lists. So we've chosen our 5 favorite alien races off the top of our heads in the past 20 minutes. We're a little bit less ordered in this than we as usual. I honestly, for me on this, I'm not sure how I would rate these, to be perfectly honest.
I have a pretty clear number 1, but that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about my number 1 per se. I think I know what I think of the races, I think the most well thought out, not necessarily well thought out, but the best developed and most, I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. I think I might know which one I think is the best sort of realized of the bunch, but
okay.
I'm not positive on that. But I'm fans of all of them. And there are races that I really enjoy that didn't make this list. Some of them because they're too similar to other ones on the list, and I prefer the ones I have on the list.
Right.
To handle it. Oh God, there are a lot of good alien races out there, but we're gonna start with our 5 favorites for the moment.
Our 5 favorites at this one moment in time.
This very well, honestly, again, you could ask me tomorrow, and I'd probably change my list. I'm going to start off with the one I think might be as I said, the most developed, and with a lot, and sort of the one I was talking about. I think was the most developed, and
all right, let's do that guy then.
It's partially because I think this race has been covered by a bunch of different authors. They were invented by one and a series of novels, and they were handed off to other author friends of his to play around within his universe. And I'm talking, of course, about Larry Niven's Kzinti.
Yeah, they're kind of awesome.
They've had a bunch of different authors writing them, some better than others, but we've seen in the course of a whole bunch of short stories and novels, the Kzinti's history going back to the Stone Age for them.
Yeah.
And they've become really fascinating in getting to see how they've changed over time.
And just the excuse me. And the way they made them actually alien despite looking like furry catmen.
For the most part, yeah. There are elements in that are not entirely normal for what humans would consider feline, but
right. But they're still awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just in the whole Manzin Wars, their evolution from scream and leap. No, that gets our ass kicked. Fuck, what now? Both at the same time! Still getting our ass kicked. Okay, leap first, then scream. Fuck, then they retaliate. Leap, then slink away quietly and wait till someone comes looking for their friends. That's how we win!
Sort of. The Kzinti never really get to that point, though.
That's true.
Now,
eventually they just go, you know what? We've had enough.
We give up. We're no longer attacking humanity. They just keep winning.
For a race of pacifists, they're remarkably good at war.
Screw this. We're doing something else. The Kzinti, for those who don't know what the Kzinti are, the Kzinti are an alien race. They're one of the early. They might be the first alien race. They are the first alien race humans sort of discover in Larry Niven's universe. When humans discover the Kzinti, humans have basically abandoned war. No longer are basically forced themselves to become nonviolent. basically.
It's actually a tremendous social faux pas to even slapstick is largely seen as monstrous.
Right. And the
Which is
Kazinti
weird.
are 8.5 foot tall tiger men.
Vaguely felinoid.
Well, heavily feline, but
Yeah.
giant gaping, maws with huge, like blade-like teeth, enormous, razor-like claws in their hands and feet. Incredibly fast, tough, agile, and they badly out-tech Earth at the start.
Yep.
And
Yeah, they beat us both technologically and physically.
Yeah.
For pound for pound.
a human has no hope in personal combat with the Kazin.
No.
And even at range combat, it's going to have an advantage because their reflexes are better.
Their reflexes are better and they got better eyesight.
Yeah. It's just what the fuck do we do? Well, it turns out humanity's just better at war.
No one conceptualizes violence like a human. Even one that has been pacifism bred into him. No one conceptualizes violence like a human.
It's not just violence. It's the Kazinti are hunters.
Mm.
They think like ambush predators for the most part. I mean,
Right.
oh god damn it! Peter mentioned an alien race that I might have to change my list with.
Now that the show has started.
Yep. Damn it! But anyways, so the Kazinti start out, if you look at their prehistory, they are, they're predators. They're they're clannish and such, and they over time sort of start manipulating themselves genetically to emphasize certain traits.
They're trying to live up to their own cultural heroes.
Right.
Be like Hercules and they're equivalents of Hercules and Gilgamesh.
Right, so they start breeding themselves to that, and it gets really weird.
Yeah. The whole time, somehow finding a way to suppress intelligence of the females of their species, and yeah.
Yeah. They are eventually discovered by an alien race, the Jotok, who badly out-tech them. They're the Zinti are Bronze Age
Yeah.
or Iron Age, I forget exactly. And star-spanning aliens find them, decide that they'll make perfect warriors for them, basically turn them into their army. The Zin serve them for a while, and then realize that the Jotok, well, we can totally
Jotok are weak.
we can totally take them, and they do. They steal the Jotok's technology, they adapt it to their own, and they proceed to start conquering everything left and right. Until they run into humanity, whom they basically attack 4 or 5 times and lose every time. And during this time, humanity keeps catching up technologically to the point they exceed the Kazinti.
Yes.
And the Kazinti basically at this point just go, fuck it! And the thing is that they've, over this period of time, have been losing their more aggressive,
Right.
all the ones who've been bred for this hyper aggressive, must attack and conquer everything. They're all dying off.
Yeah, they're all being wiped out by humanity.
So over this course of the course of a century, the breeding stock of the Zinti has changed to a much more reasoned, rational thing that are less inclined to just try to conquer everything.
Mm.
So the Zinti change over time, and another alien race I'll mention may have something to do with that.
I'm also going to point out that humanity was also just stupendously lucky because they weren't at all accidentally breeding for luck. No,
No, they weren't. They weren't
accidentally breeding for luck. They just didn't know it at the time.
As I said, I'm going to be bringing up an alien race that may or may not have something to do with that. So that was the Kazin. There's a lot more. There's tons more about the Kazin out there.
Tons of stuff. The initial short story where the first contact is actually really good.
I believe it's called The Angel's Pencil. It's worth looking for.
Yeah, and it's totally worth reading, and it's lots of fun, honestly.
Yeah, basically all of Niven's stuff in Known Space is worth reading, in my personal opinion. Well,
some
not
of
all
the
of
later
it.
Ringworld stuff starts
All the
getting...
short stories are worth reading.
Yes, every short story Livin writes is amazing. I have not read one I didn't enjoy immensely.
And the novel Ringworld is good. The other Ringworld
Yes.
books less good.
They start... Ringworld is really good, and they all sort of go downhill. It's sort of a gentle decline at first. Somewhere around Children of Ringworld? I don't know. They sort of drop off a cliff.
Yeah. So
Basically, because he just goes, you know what? I'm done.
Niv is a very
Looking
good.
to pay the bills, and I'm out.
Niv is a really good short story writer, though. So I do recommend checking out his anthologies of short stories. They're a lot of fun. So why don't you pick something else off your list, Eric?
All right. Seeing as I'm slightly more ordered than you are, and I just had Kazinti there, we'll move up to the Klingons.
Ooh, they're on my list too.
Oh, excellent! Because Klingons are awesome.
They are. They're a well done, well thought out race. Honestly.
Yeah.
They became that.
They became that. Yeah, they started out largely as a very obvious Soviet analog
With elements of Mongols.
Yeah.
They were basically the Mongol horde in space with Soviet overtones.
Yes. Yeah, they really were. They even wore gold lame.
Yeah.
But as they evolved, I really started to really dig them. Well, not really as they evolved. I mean, let's face facts. TNG was the one that did the most evolving for them, and I grew up on TNG. So,
Right.
but yeah, just about every time Klingons show up in Star Trek, I am riveted to the screen because I love the hell out of them. They're the whole warrior culture, which is usually done well and not stupidly. Looking at you every time they show up in Enterprise.
Well, yeah, Enterprise has special powers.
To make everything cool suck.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. There's some wonderful Klingon episodes.
Yeah, a lot of them in DS9. I think it's called Sons of the Empire, where Bartok recruits Worf for a mission behind Dominion lines. It's just them in a bird of prey, and you get to see how shit works, like politically in a Klingon crew. Because everyone always talks, the Klingons can assassinate to gain rank and all that other stuff. It's like, no, it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that. And yeah, it's a really good episode. I recommend watching. I think it's called Sons of the Empire.
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the TNG stuff, like the entire Klingon Civil War arc, was really well done.
Yes.
Basically, anything involving the Duros family and Gowron and Picard.
Yeah.
And obviously Worf, because duh.
Because he's the token Klingon on the ship.
Right. But yeah, the Klingons. The nice thing about the nice thing about them is they're not like you would think from like watching Worf that they're this dour sort of honor bound samurai style warrior race.
Yeah, and what's really nice is every time you meet another Klingon, you realize just how far the stick is shoved up Worf's ass.
Yeah, it's Worf is not a normal Klingon.
No, he's got an iron rod shoved so far up his ass he can taste it. Because you run into a lot of other Klingons that are just boisterous and gregarious and jocular and other big words that basically mean big fun party guys that happen to murder people all the time.
Yes, Clark one in the chat mentions the wonderful, awesome first High Chancellor they show in Next Gen, Kempek,
Yes.
who is one of my favorite Klingons in the entirety of Star Trek. He even goes out like a boss.
He goes out like a boss. He totally goes out like
Because
a boss.
he basically brings Picard on his ship and mentions to him, so he basically wants him to adjudicate the next step in the who's being the next chancellor. And Picard wants to know why. He says he's dying. He's like, oh really? He said, yeah, how? He said, I'm being poisoned. What? In the wine. And at which point he just take a huge swig from the wine mug. The apparently poisoned wine.
He's
He
like,
knows.
deed's done. Fuck it. I'm drinking.
Kempek is wonderful.
That's actually a great episode because it shows that the Klingon politics are even more backstabbingly treacherous than fucking Romulans.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bit where an assassination attempt, someone uses a bomb to try to off one of the proposed new chancellors, and Picard's the only one taking the investigation seriously because the other two are just sort of like, because the others are like, yeah, one of us did it. If I didn't do it, then I wish I had type of deal.
Right.
And it's not until they realize that there's outside influence that one of them gets really upset. I'm not giving anything away.
Right.
But,
oh, whatever. I think we spoiled this one on the show before, Eric.
Yeah, actually.
It's it turns out like through the Enterprise's investigation that it's a Romulan bomb.
Yes.
And Gowron's like, wait, you brought the Romulans into this? You brought out no.
Gowron immediately sits up, just shoots daggers right at Duras and goes, dude, I was totally that was a stand-up assassination run. I was behind it, but dude, fucking Romulans.
Fuck that. So yeah, I adore the Klingons. Just seeing that the Next Gen did such a wonderful job at turning them into something more than just the
Space Mongols.
The Space Mongols that they were in the original series.
Yeah, and Star Trek 6 also did a great job.
Yes, I agree completely.
Like, holy crap, like, General Chang is one of my favorite Klingons. Like, he's the calm, cool, collected murder monster. Like, he's just... He knows what's going on, he's cool, he's calm, he's not dispassionate. But he never lets his emotions get away from him. He's great.
Yep.
And I also just want to throw out the aesthetics of the Klingons. I love the aesthetics for the Klingons. The gray leather, the looks of their ships are just very aggressive and predatory looking. That I really like that. I like that inside everything's still clean, but dark and brooding.
Right.
I love the aesthetics of the Klingons. Klingons are awesome.
I'm not shocked that you had the Klingons on your list at all. All right. Why don't we go something else from my list?
All right.
Let's see. Well, we mentioned two things off. One swimming off. We both of us had in both our lists. So
yeah.
all right. I'm gonna go again. This has been in no particular order. Our favorite alien races. I'm gonna have to go next to the Narn. I think
the Narn almost made it to my list. The Narn are pretty awesome.
This is their race. They're one of the species from Babylon 5. They're one of the big powers. The Narn. I just love the Narn's history. You know. They are presented very early on as sort of very aggressive and dangerous, and potentially a real threat to our heroes.
And vengeance obsessed.
And such.
Like not just Jakar, but the Narn in general seem to be obsessed with getting even with Centauri.
Right, because historically the Narn basically their first contact, as far as they know, was the Centauri, who proceeded to enslave them.
Right.
And eventually the Narn rebelled and
them off.
won their independence from the Centauri. Now, part of the reason this happened with the Centauri is they'd basically gone all late period Rome, and were very sort of their empire was sort of crumbling from within at that point. And so they sort of gave the Narn the opportunity to break free. And then the Narn basically, in a sort of a case of never again, proceeded to start basically taking as much territory as they can to make themselves as powerful and tough as they can, so that no one would do that to them again.
Right.
Of course, during the process of this, they end up conquering a bunch of lesser races and such.
Quotation marks, lesser, but
when I say lesser, I mean less powerful.
Yeah. Okay.
Specifically, like races that have like one system and like no navy to speak of. And the Narn became a major power doing all this. And they're presented as we said, presented early on, and especially their ambassador on Babylon 5, Jakar, as basically being very aggressive and very much sort of the bad guys. But over the course of the show, you start seeing that all their agreements with the Centauri are pretty justified.
Absolutely justified, honestly.
And Jakar is actually a lot more nuanced person than he comes across at first.
Well, Shakar also ends up having sort of a spiritual apotheosis,
Yes.
and which is really awesome to watch. Like seeing not only the spiritual side of the character, but the spiritual side of the species coming through and their beliefs.
Yes. And part of that is the brilliant acting job Andreas Katsoulis does.
Yeah, because he's fucking amazing.
He was great. He really was.
Dead, 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 dead. That scene right there.
Oh God, that scene. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, virtually any scene involving Jakar and Londo is good.
Yeah.
But oh my God, that's not. I don't think that's him and Londo, if I remember correctly. But
It might be him and Veer.
it's yeah. I think it. Oh my God.
Anyway, there's this bit where either Londo or Veer ends up in an elevator with Jakar, and this is after the Centauri have done a whole lot more bad shit to the Narn, and the Centauri in question, I think it's Veer, tries to apologize. So Jakar pulls a knife, cuts open his hand, and squeezes it so blood is dripping out. And with each drop, he repeats the word "dead" until the door is open and he leaves.
It's an incredibly powerful scene.
Yeah.
And I think we're both forgetting like a line or two that's said in there, but oh my God.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Clark one in the chat brings up it was Veer.
Okay.
And let's just say that Jakar does
Veer
not
is
accept.
Veer is such a nice guy.
Yeah. So why don't we? But yeah, so the Narn. The other things I love about them. I think they have this one their look. Much like how you like the aesthetic of what they do with the Klingons.
Yeah, I have to agree. The Narn look very cool, also.
And I love the way their ships look. On top of everything else. I think they are culturally very interesting, just because of where they've ended up is very well informed by their past.
Yeah.
Which you get to hear about in the show, so you actually understand exactly how they got to where they are. And it's one of the strengths of the show in general is that you find out a lot about like a lot of both the species and the people, the individuals' pasts, and how they've informed their present and where they're going. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, they did an excellent job with the Narn in B5.
The Narn
The Narn are amazing. The Narn are awesome.
Yeah. All right, Eric, pick your turn to pick one.
All right, so I think I'm going to pick one that doesn't actually have a culture because they're not sapient. We're going to do the Xenomorphs in the Alien series.
Ooh, good one.
Because they're just so endlessly fascinating. The whole parasitic / predatory life cycle that they have, and they're so visually distinctive. Like, I remember like just being completely obsessed with them as a kid when I snuck down to watch Alien, and on like a midnight show after my parents went to bed, and just thinking they're so freaking cool, and you know, it's really funny because I didn't realize it because it was something I saw when I was a kid. It didn't occur to me, but I didn't realize it until I was taking a sexuality and art class back in college. That the Xenomorph is a series of black rubber dildos glued onto a man suit. And made angry.
Oh,
that just made it even cooler. It's a horrible dick monster.
Yeah.
And there's so... Just the idea of this eyeless, black, massive chitin coming at you that just looks just enough like a man to creep you out.
Yeah,
even removing the psychosexual overtones of them.
Right.
Complete with like the flashing silver teeth and the drool and the acidic blood, and yeah, so much about them is so fascinating.
Right. They are one of the more terrifying. They're really fucking creepy.
Yeah, and the whole ecology that they sort of bring with themselves. It is just and the obvious fact that they part of the life cycle is not just implanting a host an egg into a host, but they draw genetic material from the host as the host were the male or female or whatever, and it will alter the form of the alien as it pops out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're really freaking creepy.
they're really beautifully done, and honestly, just the right mix of creepy and terrifying. Like seriously, Geiger really nailed it with the design of them.
It's among his best work.
Yeah.
Oh my god, yeah. And they've been involved in two exceptionally good movies.
Yes. And then some not so good ones.
Yeah. uh, oh, Alien, the first one, is the movie that solves the biggest problem the Haunted House movie has.
Why don't you just leave? Well, it's cold outside. There's no kind of atmosphere.
Yeah. So what if we put the Haunted House in space?
I see.
Cunning. And Aliens
It's also equal parts slasher movie.
Yes, well, absolutely. And Aliens is, of course, just a really good sci-fi action movie. I mean,
Yeah. It's not really a horror movie, although you get a bit of that when they find the hive and find all the colonists welded to the wall.
yeah, it's a creepy moment, but
Yeah, but it doesn't have the sort of oh my god, what's happening? Like in that
yeah,
whole scene.
because you know what's happening.
Yeah,
It's
you
bad.
that your skin isn't crawling in anticipation and dread like that scene in the air ducts in Alien.
Yeah.
And Alien 3 wasn't bad. I like Alien 3. I think I'm in the minority there.
It's better than the other ones.
The first two, but it's still a pretty good movie.
It's a serious step down from the first two, and
Yes.
it's better than 4. And
I think the thing that annoys me most about 4 is that it was so close to being a great action adventure with aliens.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. No. I adore the first two, though, so. Alright. I'm trying to think of anything else I feel like saying about the xenomorphs.
The facehuggers.
Ugh.
Like, seriously, like, vagina spider that, like, shoves a penis down your throat and lays eggs. Holy crap!
Yeah, well, it's part of that whole
The whole
parasitic
time
life.
it's strangling you. There's so... Yeah, I can't talk about the xenomorphs without going to psychosexual territory anymore, but...
Well, there's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that, because they're rape made manifest, honestly.
Alright, I guess I'll go with another one now. And I think I'm sticking Bab 5 for this one.
Alright.
And we talk about the Narn, I have to talk about the other half of the equation.
The Centauri.
The Centauri, who are, I think, equally fascinating. Just because they are the sort of, a lot of ways, sort of the entire, they are the counterpoint to the Narn is the big thing. The Narn are this, they are the revenge-driven. They are, never again put upon. Trying to make sure that
They're the embittered victims that will never be victims again.
And the Centauri are the former sort of, galaxy-spanning conquerors whose day has passed them by.
Yeah.
And they are desperately reaching back for those glory days.
And they're so... They remind me of France right before the Revolution. They remind me of ancient Rome. They remind me of the British Empire as it's falling apart.
Right. Well, that's the whole point. That's what That's what they're supposed to be, and they do. And JMS did such a good job at getting that across, and yet still making them distinct. They've got all these wonderful sort of political, these sort of interesting cultural interactions amongst themselves. like, virtually every Centauri that you end up meeting in the show comes across. They've got this. I mean, the two faces of the Centauri for the show are not typical Centauri, but
No.
they're not dissimilar from most Centauri either. Is both Londo and Veer are gregarious in their own ways.
Yeah.
I mean, Veer is less outgoing than Londo, shall we say? But he's likable, and Londo.
Yeah, you can't not like Veer.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, Londo really is in many ways, up until a certain point, is he has the potential to be the best of the Centauri. What is great about the Centauri as a species, as a people, because he's brave, he's
Patriotic.
he's patriotic, he's driven, he's supportive of his friends. He will help people out when he feels that he can, and he's a great man who's stuck in a position with one gigantic, horrible, just tragic flaw is his patriotism. Just
His patriotism is practically blind.
yeah, it's what does him and the Centauri in to a large degree. Because he is given the opportunity to get it back for the Republic, get the Republic's glory back, and it's not that he's getting personal glory. He honestly
No.
doesn't. I mean, yeah, he wants that, but that's not what drives him. It's the fact that he can reestablish the Centauri the Centauri Republic as mattering, and he takes it, and it leads down this.
I want things to be the way they used to be. Can you do that for me, Mr. Morgan?
And it wow.
Yeah.
And part of it is the just the power of Londo Mollari is just a brilliant character, but
Also, the actor behind him.
Peter Jurassic is fantastic.
Yes.
But it's not just that; really is the species as a whole. I mean, they're not as in depth as the Narn in some ways, but the Narn aren't a complete picture without them, I think.
Yeah.
And the two of them together just sort of but this you see there's, as I said, they're sort of all the dark reflection of the Narn in a lot of ways. They are their opposites, and I love the way they sort of they complement each other from a storytelling standpoint.
Mm.
And they are a race that just stands out. One of the alien races that just stands out in my mind whenever I think of aliens in science fiction, just because there's all of the Centauri characters are so memorable.
Yes. They really are. But they're just, my one complaint with Centauri is that they're so bloody human looking. They don't feel alien to me.
And they point that out during the show is a really interesting thing.
Yes.
That's the bit I like. And there's a joke in I want to say the pilot, where they're Londo is talking with Mr. Garibaldi, the head of security on Babylon 5, and Garibaldi points out to him that when humanity met the Centauri claimed that Earth were a long lost colony, despite that they're biologically completely incompatible. And Londo's like, oh, it was A, we look similar, and B, it was a bureaucratic mistake. We thought it was this system, it was a different system entirely. What do you want me to do, slit my wrists? and Garibaldi's like, Londo, Centauri don't have major blood vessels in the wrist. What, do you think I'm stupid? So, on the surface, they're very similar, but there are a lot of very distinct differences, shall we say.
The way Londo cheats at cards.
Yes, yeah. Using his genitalia.
Yep.
All four of them. Yeah, yeah, he cheats at cards. At all. But yeah, I just think that but yeah, the Centauri are just fascinating, and I understand why that sort of they don't come across as alien as alien, but I think somehow
it's not even just that. It's the their dress is very much
yeah.
The way they're dressed, the fashion, their ship design, it's all in service to remind us of our own ancient empires. And I understand that from a storytelling point of view, but it makes them less alien in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And that's why they didn't make it to the list for me.
Sure, and
I love them; they're great, but that's why they didn't make it.
But for me, I think that's what makes them interesting is that they are an example of an alien race that is very human, and yet still very alien.
Mm.
They are alien in subtle ways, and I really like that about them. I think that they're a case of not all aliens have to be completely alien to be alien.
I think Star Trek does a good example of that, honestly.
Well, the problem is most Star Trek aliens don't really get it across as well as the Centauri, in my opinion.
That's true. Yeah, and the Klingons do a pretty good job.
The Klingons are a great example. Also,
part of it is also like so much ink has been spilled on the Klingons.
Yeah, and it took them a while to get there too. You know, it took them the original series plus most of the first movies before Next Gen came out. Yeah. Before they actually got to the point where the Klingons actually became what they are. So, yeah, I don't know.
And further developed by Deep Space Nine, and yeah.
Yeah, and also the fact that while it's very likely that most aliens will be completely alien to us, there's it's also the odds of if it's not impossible they'd be very similar too. I mean, there's
it's not impossible.
We have no idea.
It's just exceedingly unlikely.
Well, the odds of us actually meeting another alien species at all is exceedingly unlikely. So
yeah.
Go figure. All right, time for you for another alien off your list, another species off your list.
All right, I'm gonna go with the Wookiees because Wookiees are cool. That's pretty much the only reason why. They're these giant, hairy. I don't know how to describe it. They've got. I'm having trouble articulating this. The thing about the Wookiees is that they're very bestial looking, but and it's largely because Chewbacca ends up being the exemplar of the Wookiees. They're also very technical and they're good gadgeteers. They know what they're doing. They're not. Their appearance belies their civility, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And even their speech, like they sound like howling. They sound like howler monkeys, or cats, or what have you. Any number of bestial things. But they're actually pretty bright. And one of my favorite little Star Wars spoofs is someone went and subtitled all of Chewbacca's lines and made him into our sarcastic, joking asshole. Yep. And it's awesome.
It's funny. It's funny stuff.
The hell are you doing, Chewie? Have you ever tried to weld with fur on your hands? And yeah, again, a lot of it is because of Chewbacca. But as more ink has been spilled about them, you learn that Chewbacca is really kind of an exemplar of the species,
mm-hmm.
and which ends up happening with pretty much every alien you run into in the Star Wars series. But whatever.
Right.
That's why there aren't more Star Wars aliens on here. Because in general, I'll find a lot of them interesting. But yeah. And
yeah.
The whole bit about their home world and the weird tiered system that they live in. The idea is the planet's covered with, as Star Wars planets are wont to be, it has a single terrain type.
Yes.
Which is heavy forest. But the idea is the canopies that form these, because they're also thickly interwoven, form these tiers, and the further down you go from the treetops, the nastier things get. And it's like a rite of passage to show how badass you are for a Wookiee to go down several tiers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Wookiees are cool. That's pretty much all I have to say about them.
I'm a fan of the Wookiees. They were close to making my list. I sort of ended up edging them off because a lot of the stuff where you find out about sort of the the history of the Wookiees and such. A lot of it's covered in material that I'm not a fan of,
Yeah, yeah.
I've not read. I just had explained to me.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not a big, as I said, I'm not a big fan of the expanded universe stuff for the most part, and
It's dead now.
and a lot of the stuff where they explain the stuff is like a lot of stuff where they explain some stuff going on with the Wookiees is kind of
Poop.
yeah.
It's
It's in a lot of the bad books.
It's not a lot of the bad books. I encountered most of it through role-playing games.
Yes, and that helps a lot. Because they've done the good soldiers work and have read through all the people who wrote the role playing games have read through all the crap and have distilled down the facts for us.
Yes.
And I appreciate that they did that because it means I don't have to read that crap. Believe me, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, thank God for that.
Because, oh God, some of those books.
And that's why I love picking up RPGs centered around worlds that I like. Because now I don't have to sift through all the fan fiction crap to get to the stuff that I care about. Some of it might even be good.
Right. I said, I like the Wookiees a lot. They didn't quite make the list for me, as I said, but they kind of got bumped by the Narn.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's like, there are a bunch of species that could have been on the list, but they got sort of...
Wookiees ended up on the list purely by rule of cool.
I can accept that. I like the Wookiees a lot. Honestly, if I was choosing a Star Wars race, the Wookiee would be the race for me. Wookiees would be the race for me. They are the best developed of the non-human races in Star Wars.
Yeah. And while I love me the Trandoshans, they're not quite as cool as the Wookiees, despite being bad guys, which automatically gives them like 20 points of cool.
And they're not as well developed either.
They're not as well developed is the biggest problem.
It's the same thing with like the Duros and the Celestins.
Yep.
Both of which aesthetically are kind of neat, but
and the Rhodians and the Quarren. And,
God, the poor Rhodians. They are one of the coolest looking alien races I've seen in a long time. I know nothing about them really.
Yeah.
So yeah, from there, I definitely want to say, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of species that I'm forgetting.
Well, I've got another one.
Well, I have one more also. I'm just debating
Okay.
whether there's anything. Sorry, not species I'm forgetting, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say about Wookiees. But I guess I can move on to my number one.
All right.
My quote number one.
Your number one.
They're not really my number one. They're just the last one I'm mentioning, but just because I wanted to, I was debating. They tie into one of the other races I mentioned, and I didn't. But I wanted to keep the two five races right next to each other. The species in question are the Pearson's puppeteers from known space.
Yeah, called it.
Oh my God, the Pearson's puppeteers.
Yeah, I'll give the puppeteers props because they are honestly they honestly are alien in their psychology and their physiology, and yeah, they're great
in
aliens.
Every conceivable way.
They really are aliens.
They're definitely one of the most alien species I've come across in science fiction. And I'm a big fan of them just in terms of, and I just think they're fascinating. The Pearson puppeteers, I mean, just from a physiological standpoint, they are three-legged aliens with two heads on two separate necks. They are herbivores. They are abject cowards.
Yeah. They'll actually go catatonic.
And they are possibly the most terrifying species in the entirety of known space that are still alive as a species.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there are some of the dead races that are really ancient are scarier. But outside of them, outside of the Nukhtapun and the Thrint, after that, it's really kind of the slavers. Not slavers, the puppeteers.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Master manipulators. With a ridiculously long view of things.
Yeah,
These guys are masters of the long con.
they are. They are. They are very profit motivated. They are a mercantile species. And as Eric said, they play the long game.
Like 20,000 years is about a medium long length con for them.
Their plans last about that long. They came across evidence of both the humans that the Kazin very early on decided to avoid them both because the humans were warlike and terrifying, and the Kazin were giant predatory space cats of doom. So we don't want to deal with them. Wait a minute.
That noise.
But what if we manipulate things just enough so that the Kazin will eventually run across humanity? And we subtly manipulate a few things with humanity, just by arranging certain small events that will impact how humanity moves forwards, so that humanity will move towards pacifistic culture, burying their ability to wage war. So that when the Kazin stumble across it, they'll be forced to bring it out, but under terms that we can accept. And then the Kazinti will blunt their claws and teeth on humanity and be forced to evolve into a species we can deal with. Yeah. This is a puppeteer plan.
This is a puppeteer plan.
And the puppeteers decided they liked what humanity became. So they decided to sort of arrange things and create things so that humanity would start breeding for luck. So they wanted humanity to be lucky because they thought that that'd be nice for them.
Yes. Hence, they introduced the concept of a lottery for the right to have children.
Because they decided to do that because humanity, eventually they'll run out of space in their planets they've colonized, and
they're breeding faster than they can expand. So
right, so they had to have some way to limit population growth. So why not a lottery? So basically there are much different ways. One of the options to get extra birthrights is there's a lottery for it. And then over time, people who were a little bit lucky were the people who were children of ones who won, who were born because their parents won the lottery, and then they would occasionally have kids. Some of those would eventually have kids that won the lottery, what were born because their parents won the lottery, the genetic lottery and such, and so on and so on and so forth. And over time, humanity becomes luckier.
This is in no way, shape, or form intentional.
It
totally was.
It is something that the puppeteers arranged because they noticed that humans seem to have a bit of luck as a species, and they hypothesized that it was a latent psychic trait, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Additionally, at one point, they hire Beowulf Schaefer, who's a character in a bunch of the short stories, and a human explorer, to test fly one of their hyperdrive ships to the center of the galaxy and back, so you can see what it was there. And on the way, he discovers that most stars at the center of the galaxy had gone supernova, and the blast wave was radiating outwards, causing more stars to do that. And eventually, the wave would reach where they are, about where humanity and the part of space that was known space, and wipe out all life there in about 20,000 years. So he reported to puppeteers, and puppeteers proceeded to up and move their homeworld.
Because that shit's scary.
So they left 20,000 years before the blast wave would get there. And they moved to the Lesser Magellanic Cloud, which is where they calculate, which is very likely the next destination for virtually all the species that hadn't left yet in known space when would be fleeing to when the blast wave got there. And the puppeteers would be there, all set up, ready to trade with them when they arrived. Also, puppeteers would be their method of travel. They would do it slower and not through hyperspace because they hate traveling in hyperspace.
Because it's scary.
Right. So they'd have to do it the long, slow way. So they'd arrive just about the same time, about 20,000 years or so, when the rest of the species would be arriving there from having fled the galaxy, blowing up.
How convenient.
God damn the puppeteers. They are
Puppeteers are pretty awesome.
they are such good manipulators. It's all this little subtle stuff that you notice as you read through the stories. You're like, oh fuck, damn. They're for a species that has no actual intention of hurting you physically in any way, shape, or form. They're abjectly terrifying.
Mm.
All right, Eric, what's your last species?
This is going to come as a surprise to no one.
Okay.
Orcs. With a K, which is how you know they're from space.
Oh, space orcs. Of course they were. Right, the 40k space orcs. Got it.
I love orcs. In particular, this 40k space orcs.
Mm-hmm.
As many problems as I have with GW's business practices and tendency to shoot themselves in the foot, my God, they hit it. They just hit it great with the space orcs. Like another species that brings its own ecology with it, its own entire ecology. It doesn't require another species.
Right.
The premise being, orcs are completely asexual. They reproduce via spores. Most of these spores don't turn into anything more than mushrooms. But if there aren't enough other greenskins around, they'll hatch squigs at first. The squigs bounce around and they eat things and set up shop, and then eventually snotlings show up, and snotlings start gathering random materials as they're wont to do. Snotlings are like tiny, tiny little goblins with animal-level intelligence. And then the Gretchens show up, which are basically space goblins, and they start herding the squigs and building stuff and everything, and the orcs show up, and they take over, because that's what orcs do. The whole idea of knowledge being programmed to certain individuals' genes, which is how you end up with things like they're doctors and mechanics. It's just they just have a knack for it, and they just figure it out on their own. The perfect survivor species. If you're going to build a species that can survive fucking everything, you build space orcs. And yeah, that's just the fact they're so bloody resilient. There's several like little fluff bits where there's a great one like just a little sidebar in some rule book where it's like, boss, I can't. Boss, I think I lost my arm. What do you mean you think you lost it? Well, it was over there a minute ago, but it's gone now. You think you can help me find it? Well, we could always go to the mech boy and he can make you a new one. No, I think I'm better off with only one arm. I can fit into tighter spaces.
Yeah.
Completely unfazed by the fact he's got a bleeding stump where his arm used to be.
Right.
And that's another thing. They're hilarious. They're wonderfully comedic in a truly brutal way. They're excellent villains because the highest work of art an orc can aspire to is to be excellent at fighting. That's their cultural raison d'etre is to be good at fighting. It's everything for them. So they'll show up and they'll beat the crap out of you. It's their way of saying hi.
Right.
We're fighting you, so you're obviously cool. And just the whole aesthetic behind it, the whole junker punk DIY just ramshackle appearance of everything they do, yet it somehow works. And, the whole implication is that, it doesn't actually work. It's simply the force of orc belief combined with their low-level subconscious telekinetic field that makes their tech work.
Right.
Things that they're not even conscious of. And orcs aren't stupid, they're just very simple.
Right.
You see that over and over again. They're not... Any orc that lasts more than a couple years is actually pretty damn bright. He's just very simple and always takes the most direct path, and that direct path is usually smashing his face into it.
Right.
Because his face is the hardest part of his body.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're not nearly as enthused about the orcs as I am, but I love them.
They're fun. I enjoy them. And I completely understand why you love them.
I love them so much. they're they're a force of nature, and they're a force of nature that everyone has to reckon with in a galaxy filled with things that don't bother counting.
Right.
Like they don't bother counting like how many people they lost or what resources they need to throw at this, but they have to worry about the orcs.
Right. No, they're definitely interesting, and I'm just utterly not surprised they're on your list. Before we go, we should probably go over a few of our honorable mentions just quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to guess that the Scarens were on your honorable mention list.
They're on my honorable mention list.
Yep.
Again, excellent villains, very visually distinctive, truly terrifying in like that unstoppable juggernaut kind of way.
Yep. Yeah, the Scarens are definitely really cool. The Urquan from Star Control 2, from Star Control's video game series, are definitely on my list. They're honorable mentions for me. They came
for me from Mass Effect.
Oh, sorry, who?
The Krogan.
Oh, yeah, the Krogan. All the species in Mass Effect are definitely interesting.
Yeah.
The Krogan are definitely up there. The Mass Effect species don't resonate quite as much with me as they do with some other people. I've only played the first game, though, so...
Right, the Krogan become... The Krogan are cool. I like the Krogan a lot. They're not as cool as orcs by a long shot, but they're also smarter and don't rely as heavily on their genetics.
Right. Yeah. Again, back to the Star Control games. The Spathy
I'm sorry.
also.
I didn't mean to.
No. We're in the honorable mention part. We can bounce around all we want.
Okay.
No, but yeah, the Spathy also were hilariously awesome from there.
Are those the murder squirrels?
No, the Spathy are cowardly, hyper-intelligent mollusks, basically.
Ah, okay.
Who are the ultimate cowards, and due to being terrified of an alien species that was preying upon them, went from Stone Age to Atomic Age in about a century, and then moved their entire species off planet to their moon.
Awesome.
And in the course of several months, managed to reverse engineer the Urquan slave shield, and then encase their mooner to make themselves safe. As I mentioned, the Spathy are awesome.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, the Spathy are fucking hilarious. Yeah, the problem with the Urquan is that they do suffer a bit of sort of cultural overlap with the Narn. They both have that sort of never again type sort of.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I think the Narn do it. The Narn do it better.
They do. The Martians from the H.G. Wells's.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What a great monster. Like you don't even really see them throughout most of the book because they're just these implacable war tripods with heat rays and tentacles that using poison gas to root out resistance, and then supplanting the local ecology with their own red weeds. And then when you actually get a look at them, they're little more than they're hyper intelligent, vicious octopi.
Right. Some other ones that are worth mentioning: the Modis from the Moten God's Eye series, who are these
series.
They're presented in the first book as harmless, likable, not at all dangerous aliens, who it turns out are just terrifyingly good at technology and eventually become major threats. They completely abandoned the poor helpless Modi in this sort of facade in the second book, and you're just like, oh my god. They're really well done. If you haven't read the Moten God's Eye and the sequel, The Gripping Hand, it's worth reading. They're both worth reading.
All right. The culture from the Ian Banks culture series, actually. They're nominally human. They're about as human as Klingons are Romulans. Simply because they've engineered themselves to the point where they're hardly human. They certainly look human when they want to.
Right.
And an entire species of an entire galaxy spanning super powerful culture, called the Culture, strangely enough, of bored decadent dilettantes who are really terrifying if they pay attention to you.
Right.
And not just because that all the hard stuff's handled by AI thousands of times smarter than anything else in the universe.
Right. Yeah, I've heard you and Roach talking about the Culture a lot. So, the Uplift series has a bunch of really great alien races.
Yes,
Also.
yes, it does.
The Soro, the Jofer, the Thenanin.
The bird guys whose name I can't remember.
Yeah. Oh God.
They're actually pretty cool. The Uplift War, is that the one that takes place on the world where where they show up to? I don't even remember. I just remember the bird guys are really cool, and again, great villains.
If you've not read the Uplift books, they're really good.
They're really good.
The first three especially.
I was prejudiced against David Brin for a long time because The Practice Effect was the first book I ever read, and it's very clearly him not giving a fuck, and it got published.
Yeah, but his other books are really good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The first book I read of his is The Practice Effect, which is a stupid if fun read, and it was obviously him just not caring. He's like, I'm going to put together something fun and silly and ridiculous, and what do you know, my publisher published it. Whatever.
Oh my God. Yeah, we haven't mentioned everything so far. I mean, like, there are a bunch of races.
Someone in the chat mentions Daleks. Daleks are fucking awesome.
The Daleks, the Cybermen, you know.
The Borg.
The Borg. Oh my God, the Borg.
Yeah.
You know, the Romulans, the Gorn.
The Gorn are fucking great.
You know, the Vulcans.
The Gorn are great as presented in Star Trek Online.
Yes. You know, the Tholians.
Yeah, the Tholians, the
Cardassians. I mean, just
yeah. Star
Trek's got a great list of them. Star Wars has a bunch of great aliens, although for the most part they aren't that well developed. They're mostly just individuals.
Gamorrean. I mean, I didn't realize it for the longest time, but Gamorreans are D&D space orcs.
They are. You didn't realize that?
It took me for fucking ever to figure that out.
Yeah. One that we should mention, just because they are very different from the rest of the species we mentioned. These are from a very different style of science fiction, but the Vogons.
Yes.
You gotta have the Vogons.
Gotta have the Vogons.
If only because the first time they're mentioned, their ships are described as hanging in the air in exactly the same way as bricks don't. I love Douglas
Adams has some great turns of phrase. Like that man's prose is just a joy to read.
Yeah, him and
Terry Pratchett.
Terry Pratchett, their ability to turn a phrase.
Yeah.
Just like, you know, like there's a wonderful line in Guards where he mentions they're going down Short Street, which is the longest street in Ankh-Morpork.
Yes.
It's just like just a little nuggets like that. You're just like, that's great. You know,
the whole concept of bistronomic driven drives.
Oh, the bistronomic, yeah. Oh, bistro math, yes.
Bistro math, yes. Because math is always different in a bistro.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the Zentradi.
The Zentradi, yeah. You know what? I'm surprised I didn't mention the Zentradi either. Yeah, those are one of those I just completely brain farted about. The Zentradi. What's not to love about them? They're
pretty awesome. Knight of Spades in the chat mentions the Thing from outer space. All right, the problem with the Thing is it's a monster from it's an individual monster from a movie. And it's
read an excellent short story, called "The Thing from Another World." I can't remember.
Well, that's what the movie's based on.
Yes, but it's a retelling of John Carpenter's The Thing from the perspective of the Thing. It's actually really good because the premise is the whole time the alien's absorbing people, and it's how it communicates. It's trying to say hi.
Interesting.
Like, why do they resist this? Why do they resist communion? It's how we blend. It's how you understand one another. Every other entity in the galaxy does this. Why don't they? And when it realizes that the giant bone-covered tumors atop their shoulders are their brains and where they think, it completely freaks out.
Huh.
It's a great short story.
Interesting. Yeah, we've mentioned, we've talked a lot. There are scores of other great aliens out there.
Pretty much everything that shows up in Farscape.
Yeah,
a lot of it doesn't get nearly enough development, partially because Farscape, the show, is set in, or the setting of the show. It's a bunch of guys constantly on the run throughout uncharted space.
Right. So, like the Nabari are fascinating, but we don't get nearly enough about them.
Yeah. The Luxons, the Luxons sound really cool with this weird, with the whole spirituality and the whole warrior culture thing. They come across at first as kind of Klingons with tentacles, but the more you get to know Dargo and the more he's let slip about Luxon culture, the more you realize how different they are.
Yep.
But it's something that's given to you in drips and drabs over the course of an entire television series through the perspective of one character.
Right.
And the same thing with the Hynerians in Rigel.
Right. And the Delvians with and Zahn.
Yeah.
All right, we should probably wrap things up. We did get some questions, but I think we'll save them for next time.
Cool.
Because we have run a bit long.
We have run a bit long.
Not too long, but we've run a little bit long. Thanks, everyone, for watching today. Hope you all had a good time. We will not be back next week. Largely because I won't be around on Monday next week. So we're going to have a week off.
He's being abducted by aliens, which is why we decided to do aliens. He's got it scheduled.
Sure, that sounds like as good an explanation as any. So I won't be around next Monday for Surly Grognards, so we won't be recording next week. We'll be back the week after that with a new show. Hopefully we'll come up with an actual topic. We'll see.
We'll figure something out.
If you do have
shit, how did I forget about the Quintessons?
Anywho, if you've got questions you'd like answered in the show, we try to save time at the end of each episode to answer viewer questions. Or if you've got show topic suggestions, we love getting those. Or if you've got feedback for us, constructive criticism especially, we love getting that stuff. All of that stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
You can email us. Our email address is surlygrognards@yahoo.com, surlygrognards@yahoo.com. Or you can find us on on our forums, which you can find at mechagm.forumer.com. You can find me on Google Plus and Facebook, Peter Bowman in both places, and you can always hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @mechagm. I usually tweet up before we start the show, or if we have to delay or anything like that, so keep an eye on my Twitter if you want to keep an eye out for updates. My Twitter handle is @mechagm, and we record the show every Monday night, normally at 7 p.m. Eastern, here on twitch.tv/mechagm. You can find the previous recordings of the show on my blog, which you can find at mechagm.blogspot.com. I think that's everything.
Yes.
Excellent.
I'll agree to this.
Thanks again for watching tonight. We hope you all had a good time and enjoyed the show. We'll see you guys next time, and until I see you guys next, keep on gaming, guys. Take care.
Bye.